Hello, I'm Matthew Buzzy, and I'm here with John Burek, and we have a pretty unique product today. This is from Framework Computer. This is their main product, which is the Framework laptop. And this is not sort of your normal PC, not your normal laptop. This has a lot of different facets that make it unique. Most importantly, that it's very modular, upgradable, DIY friendly. Secondly, it's very environmentally friendly, in part because it's upgradable and repairable by the user. That gets into topics like right to repair, also being more environmentally conscious. But yeah, the whole thing is deconstructible. This is really their marquee product, as I said. So this is not some sort of spinoff from a larger brand. This is kind of their mission. This is kind of the thing they believe in. And it's made up of recycled materials, in addition to the idea that you won't need to throw out the whole computer when something goes wrong or you want to make an upgrade. And John's been looking at it, checking it out, and getting into the different modules and exactly how it works. So John, what does this thing look like? Tell me about the form factor and what you can do with it.
Yeah, so this looks like a very unprepossessing cardboard box, right? There's actually a really interesting laptop in here. So let me poke this up a little bit, get it in the light a bit. So we have the laptop on the left there. We'll take it out in a moment, but you'll also notice in the box here, there's a bunch of small, almost like little chocolate bar sized modules in there. And I'm gonna take them out one by one and show you what they are, but they're sort of integral to what the laptop is about, modularity. So let's open it up and look at the machine itself. The machine itself, if you just look at it at first glance, it looks like a pretty basic laptop. It's got a gear on the front, very light and all aluminum construction, very sort of modern looking. And if you were just looking at it at a glance, it wouldn't really catch your attention. Mm-hmm. But in the box here, there's something that at first I looked at and I thought it was, oh, they included a stylus, but it's really not. What this is sort of a uni tool that you would use to basically upgrade anything in this laptop that's upgradable. So we'll get to that in a moment. I'm just going to move this out of the way so we can concentrate on the machine itself. If you look at the underside, and I to save us some time on video here, I pre-loosened the screws on the bottom. You'll notice that there are 4 bays in the corner here, 2 on either side, and a button. What you can do is you can press the button and pop things out of the bays. And I'll explain what those are in a moment. Well, let's strip the notebook down.
So as you can see already, not normal laptop behavior. This is kind of core. This is kind of core to the concept. And this is a 13.5-inch notebook. It only weighs about 2.8 pounds. I think it's 50% recycled aluminum. So off the bat, it's got a lot of different things to talk about that make it stand out. But yeah, please tell me more about these modules.
Yes, the modules here, what you could basically do is equip the laptop with a mixture of ports, storage, or connectivity modules, depending on what you're trying to do that day, or maybe just what your usual usage patterns are. So for instance, I yanked these out, and it doesn't seem to matter which order you put them in which bay, but because they all seem to attach via USB-C connectors on the end. You have an HDMI module here for HDMI video out. This one here is a micro SD card module if you are going to use it to interface with a camera or a smartphone card. We have here a DisplayPort video out if you want to connect to a DisplayPort monitor as opposed to an HDMI. And we have here a USB-C, basically a USB-C pass-through for the USB-C there for USB-C connectivity. So we had those installed there just sort of arbitrarily, but you'll notice that in the box here, Framework Computer also includes a couple of other modules, and there are also a few others that aren't included here that you can get. For instance, you can also install additional storage in these bays here. So basically you're installing the equivalent of an external SSD in one of the bays, and those come in 250 gig and 1 terabyte sizes. So in the boxes here, we've pre-removed some of them. We have the micro SD module, we have the DisplayPort module, we have the HDMI, we have 2 USB-Cs. One of them is on the table here and one isn't. And the last one here, what is this? This is a USB-A expansion port if you just want a conventional USB-A port. So depending on what you're trying to do, I mean, even if you're just trying to plug in one particular thing, you can swap out the C for the A, depending on what drives you have or what device you're trying to attach to the laptop. So pretty nifty. I mean, most laptops limit you what's installed, and then you got a bunch of dongles or adapters hanging off of it. Here you
I was just thinking of dongles, and this may seem like, oh man, it's all these things to keep track of, but you shouldn't be using them as frequently as you would be dongles. Like you don't have to bring all of these things with you every time you use it or go somewhere, because they're really semi-permanent in a way that's like, okay, I normally use a mouse that's USB-A, and I normally use, one USB-C drive or something, and you kind of keep that, and then you're like, oh, I need now something, I have a new drive, and you swap out one of those and leave it there for weeks. So it shouldn't be a dongle sort of craze and losing all these different tiny boxes. I think you could, for the most part, keep one of them with you maybe, and keep the others, in the box at home.
Yeah, the idea might be you might have maybe like a road configuration and a home configuration, depending on what you use in each place. And once you sort of figure out what you're going to be connecting to it, you'll probably leave most of them in place, at any given time. But the idea being that you can use this laptop as a sort of a basis on which, like, if 6 months from now you decide to move to a USB-C external SSD and you don't have one today, you can swap in a module so that you can use that without having to, get another cable or use a dongle with it. So pretty nifty. You can buy additional ones. And like I said, you can add storage, and I can see scenarios where, for instance, you could have a bunch of the storage modules and you swap them in and out, and use them in that way as well if you are, trying to maintain different environments or different sets of media or whatever the case is. So so you could just swap them in and out of the bottom there. You can hot swap them, USB-C, very nicely executed here. You just press a button to release and you yank. So that's one aspect of the framework, which is very much unlike other laptops. You typically are stuck with the ports you get when you buy it.
Yeah, but that is only half the battle with this laptop. That is only really scratching the surface of like kind of taking it apart. So I know there's much more to come. So why don't you show us what else it can do?
Okay, so we'll open it up over here. So a couple of things. This one's more of a, as we put it, more of a vanity thing. Framework says that they're going to offer different colored bezels for the machine. So if you're in an orange kind of mood or a dark mood or a light mood, you can get different bezels to snap on here. And the idea behind a lot of modern laptops is that there's almost no bezel in many cases. So you almost don't want to bring emphasis to the bezel, but they're pretty thin over here on the sides. And it's magnetically held on here. So I felt a little funny doing this at first because
it seems like something that a laptop should not do, but
no, absolutely not. Yeah, but it's flexi plastic, but it feels sturdy enough. It keeps wanting to go back in place. I noticed if you open it a little further, it's a little easier to get it off. And once you get your fingers down here, this is the scary part. There's a little bit of flexing. I'm making this look harder than it is.
Yeah, I think the guide said if you put it flat 180 degrees, it is easier to get the bezel off.
All right, let's do it that way. Look at that. Read the manual, John. There we go. So you can swap these in or out. They're magnetic. One thing that I should point out, which is a very nice detail, is that this unit comes with a 1080p camera capable of 60 FPS, which is not common among mainstream laptops these days. And given how much time we all spend on Zoom and whatnot, definitely a point in its favor. There's also a hardware switch for disabling it as well.
That's not something that you're going to be swapping in and out with any sort of ease or intention by the manufacturer. So they might as well put a good one of those in there.
Yeah, well, for framework laptop too, that actually would be an interesting thing to implement, wouldn't it? The ability to upgrade the onboard camera.
We've seen the size of those deconstructed at various vendor events. How small those little apertures are.
Right.
I can imagine losing that pretty.
Yeah. I can't imagine that you want to be the support, folks who are dealing with folks who are trying to implement something like this, on a basis. So, but no, kudos to Framework for putting a 1080p 60 FPS camera here in the first place, and for letting you swap the frame out. That's not all. So we've taken the frame off the display. Now I admit I pre-loosened the screws on the bottom of the chassis here. There are 5 of them on the bottom, and what you could then do is use the tool. You would actually use this end of the tool to remove the screws. They're kind of a very tiny star screw. And then you use the other end, which is a spudger, a separator for, typically you would use these if you're trying to upgrade, say, the battery in a smartphone. So get it in the crack between the keyboard deck and the rest of the laptop. And
another thing that shouldn't happen on a normal laptop, but there you go.
You shouldn't be able to do this, right? So the the keyboard deck comes out, and there's a cable here, which you need to be a little bit delicate with, that engages with the motherboard. And there goes the keyboard deck and the underside. So let's put that aside.
Which then, of course, gives you, why would you want to do this? It gives you access to other changeable parts of the computer.
Right. So here we go. So inside here, you've got all of the sort of components of the laptop exposed. Now, with a lot of laptop designs, these things are multiple layers, or they're behind other cabling, or they're restricted by the cooling solution in the laptop. Here,
on all sorts of issues.
right. So if you've ever tried to take a laptop apart, sometimes it's it's a bloody nightmare trying to get to any of the components in there because they're blocked by something else. Or you need to take out a ribbon cable to get to it, and it feels a little bit like microsurgery. But here, they kind of put everything on one plane very nicely and marked things as for what they are, and also you'll note put QR codes next to the various components that you can upgrade. And the idea here being you could scan the QR code with your smartphone and you'll see a video that explains how to remove the part and how to upgrade the part and sort of what your options are. And they also, Framework also prides itself on the fact that you can use this tool to upgrade anything in the laptop. You don't need a bunch of screwdrivers. You don't need a bunch of different tipped pliers to wrench cables out. You basically use the hex, excuse me, it's not hex, the star screw tip here to remove the, say, for instance, M2 drive or anything else that needs to be removed.
That's pretty clever. Just generally, I think it's easy to see a version of this that is much more nightmarish to get into, and I think using the QR codes also, which is something you see in a lot of the like motherboard and case instruction booklets these days, is a lot of the instruction videos and the directions are offloaded online to a video that you maybe scan through a QR code. So putting all that in a QR code on each part is pretty clever.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny you say that. At the last PC case that I'm in the process of reviewing, there was no manual, and it literally was just a business card with a QR code on it, and put it up on your phone. So yeah, definitely the trend these days. Mm-hmm. But yeah, if you take a look through the unit here, the speakers are over here. The speakers are replaced. I mean, I don't know if they will actually sell other speaker modules, but if you needed to replace the speaker modules, they're right here and removable. The batteries right up front here and held on, it looks like, by a couple star screws in the corners and this cable over here. Here's the M2 module, takes up to an M2 80 millimeter drive in there. As I recall from looking at Framework's materials and specs for this, it's a PCI Express 4 capable slot. Since the machine is based on Intel 11th generation chips, there's a Gen 4 support here, so pretty nifty. Remarkably thin thermal solution here, spread out over the CPU. Speaking of the CPUs, you can get a i5 or one of two i7 SKUs in this machine, and very easy to access the two SODIMM slots for the memory. And what's this over here? Oh, this is just telling you that you can scan the QR code. It's just a message. You can scan the QR code for information. I thought there was another component under there.
I have to admire the layout there, because I think we've increasingly seen manufacturers are just using every spare centimeter of space to maximize the thermals and the performance and all those other things, and doing that on top of it and making it all accessible and clean like that and removable. Must have been 2 or 3 times as much engineering work to figure that out. So of course, we don't know yet how good the thermals are in comparison. Maybe there's a compromise there because they had to make it accessible and they couldn't fully maximize the thermal solution because of the need to be able to access the components. But it definitely looks clean, and we will be able to tell you in the future how well the parts keep cool.
Yeah, actually, one other thing I should point out here, which I found quite amusing, is that there are credits on the inside of the laptop here, like in a movie. For the various folks who worked on the design and engineering. So I thought these were more sort of instructions on upgrades, but it's actually a set of credits on the
that's pretty cool.
So very, probably the most interesting laptop interior I've seen in a very long time, if not ever. Definitely.
Yeah, John did mention the 11th gen Intel processors. You can get up to 64 gigabytes of RAM. This does run Windows. I don't know if that was clear or we said that. It is. You can order it with various preset configurations, Windows Home or Pro, as well as different processor and storage and RAM capacities. So it's not one preset unit off the shelf, and then you have to upgrade from there. There are options, and of course, you can then go ahead and swap whichever of those many modules and components that you desire.
Yeah, I think there were 3 presets. There's a $999 model, which is Core i5 based. There's a, don't hold me to this, but I believe it's $1399 middle model, which is using a Core i7, going off memory, I believe it's the 1165 G7. And then there's an 1185 G7 Pro model, which has, I believe it's 32 gigs of memory and Windows 10 Pro. That one's $2,000, $1999. So those are the 3 preset models. And I believe there's also what's called the DIY version of it, where you're basically buying the framework, and then you can sort of a la carte buy pieces for it to, sort of equip it as you like. So they'll sell you the various port modules separately, and you can also, I believe, put Linux on it if you want as well. So very nifty laptop. Is this the future? Maybe. I would like to see laptops be more accessible and more upgradable, to be certain, and no one's really gotten it right up to this point. This is as good a attempt at it as I have seen, but entering into a very competitive market like laptops, Framework's going to need a good bit of luck and a good bit of savvy to sort of keep the development going on new modules and support for different components. Actually, one more thing I should point out, possibly the most important, the entire motherboard area here is removable, and Framework says that it will be offering in the future additional motherboard modules, so that say a year or two from now, you might want to upgrade to 12th or 13th gen Intel core, and you would be able to therefore swap out the entire motherboard area and swap in a new one there that would work within the the rest of the architecture of battery and other components.
That way you keep at least 50% of the laptop, you keep the display, you keep the case. You don't have to start from scratch if you want a new processor.
Yeah, the thing with that is unlike desktops, laptop motherboard designs are very much designed to the particular model. Mm-hmm. So you can't swap out a processor. There's no socket. The motherboard, the CPU is down on the motherboard and cannot be removed. So if you want to do an upgrade, you're pretty much bound to take out the whole guts. And because different laptop models use different designs and have connectors in different places, you just can't swap one into the other. You need to have a board that's designed for the chassis, and that's what the plan is here, is to be able to swap these out. So that would be exciting to see as well, because it's very rare that we've seen any kind of a laptop that has had any kind of a CPU upgradability. I mean, there have been a couple of socketed power laptops, really big, models over the years that have had socketed desktop CPUs. But to be able to actually swap out the mobile chip, the mobile grade chip in a laptop like this is uncharted territory. So kudos to Framework for actually making this exist.
Yeah, I think you touched on, we've seen. You said no one's even succeeded really doing it. No one's, as far as the big manufacturers have even really tried all that much to make anything upgradable or solvable. I think the biggest sort of concessions we've seen that way are in gaming and enthusiast laptops like that let you maybe upgrade the RAM or the storage, and it's still very closed off for the most part. And those are kind of the only things you can get to. They don't really have an incentive to. 90% of people buying a laptop or more don't want to touch it, don't have interest in opening it. And these big companies that are doing mass market and high volume production don't have interest in throwing out laptops and doing all the extra work that goes into being able to open it up and upgrade it. So yeah, I think something like this, I guess, sort of is an inevitable solution to that, going all in on it and making that sort of your principal belief and proof of concept here. I admire it, definitely. I hope it pans out well. We will, of course, have to put it through the paces as far as actual testing and seeing what it can do. The more experiential stuff like the screen, which, by the way, is a 2256 by 1504 resolution, so greater. It's a 3:2 aspect ratio and greater than 1080p resolution. So again, that's not something you want to throw.
One thing I should point out actually is.
Go ahead.
I was going to say about the display is that you also have easy accessibility to the display hinges over here. So crack your screen, conceivably, you can also replace the screen. So that's one of the things about laptops, is that you can typically get a display replacement if something happens to the panel, if it goes bad, gets bad pixels, or you crack it, or the cases. But usually replacing a display is kind of not trivial and kind of scary, because there's cables involved. Running through the hinge in some designs, and the hinges themselves are often feel like they've been put together by robots, and maybe have been put together by robots for all I know. But this one, you actually have access to the hinges here, and cables are routed in a way that you feel like you could do this. You could see everything that needs to be routed. So yeah, kudos for that as well.
Yeah, all that adds up, as we said, to the more environmentally friendly right to repair, which is an increasingly hot topic. Yeah, not having to throw out the kitchen sink, throw out the baby with the bathwater, so to speak. So yeah, if that's all, I think we've pretty thoroughly covered what you can do and what it looks like here. As I was saying, we'll get to the more experiential stuff about how keyboard feels, the touchpad feels, if it runs well. The base parts should run pretty well, I would say. I think it's going to be for the price, a pretty competent and all around useful laptop, but of course you don't quite know until you try it. And as you see, the keyboard can can come off and simply reattach. As John mentioned, he did undo some of the screws to make that a little quicker for you. So that isn't something you should be doing every day. I don't think you're going to be taking the keyboard off on a daily basis. So a couple screws shouldn't be too bad. And yeah, so keep your eyes out for more on this, the Framework laptop, it is known as. Thank you so much, John, for walking us through and for putting it back together with care. I'm sure the
I did not connect the keyboard to the motherboard, so it won't work. So I will be doing this again. Yes, I was just putting it together for appearance's sake.
Yeah, I'm sure the fine folks at Framework Computer will appreciate your care. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned. Check into PC Mag for a deeper dive on this in the future.